She was so angry with Zach right now, so very, very angry. He had just called to tell her that he was working overtime tonight, and then he and the guys were going to the sports bar downtown to catch the game. "Don't wait up," he had said. She could almost hear the laugh in her husband's voice, mocking her, asking her if she actually truly believed him, which of course she didn't. He was having another affair, she thought, her heart sinking. She remembered the first time she found out about his cheating. It was after the birth of their son Blaine, named for Zach's father. It had been a difficult pregnancy, especially in the later stages, and Audrina had practically become a nun for 7 of the 9 months, and then after the birth, which had been an emergency cesarean. So Zach had been shut out for nearly 10 months. Her husband's answer to this, instead of talking it through with her, was to find the hottest girl imaginable and screw her senseless in their marriage bed, and other places all over town. Audrina remembered that day vividly. It was imprinted on her mind like a scalding hot brand. She had come home early that afternoon, still expecting Zach to be at the office. Baby Blaine had spent a few hours with Audrina's mother and sister while she was at the gym, which she did twice a week to get back in shape. She liked to look good for her husband. She went upstairs and put the sleeping baby in his crib, and thought she heard muffled voices and footsteps down the hall, so she went to investigate. The door was opened slightly, and from the gap, she could see a petite blonde girl with her husband. The girl had a tattoo on her lower back, which Audrina could only just make out, tears welling her eyes. It was Victoria, a girl she sometimes hung out with at the gym. They were in the same Zumba class. Audrina had confided in Victoria that she feared her husband may go out and find his pleasure somewhere else because she felt so unattractive to him, and Victoria had used it against her and gone and screwed Zach. Audrina quickly and quietly backed away from the door, grabbed her sleeping son and went back out again. She drove around aimlessly for an additional 2 hours before returning back home once more, by which time Victoria was gone and her husband had set the house and their bedroom to rights. "How was your day?" she asked, hoping that she sounded casual and nonchalant, but inside she was fuming mad. So angry." "It was great," he answered cheerily. "I saw Greg and Faye in town and they mentioned something about us catching up with them for dinner. They're keen to meet the baby," he lied. "Oh really?" she questioned sarcastically. She put down what she was doing in the kitchen and went into the living room, where Zach was sitting on the sofa, watching the football, wearing his New Orleans Saints jersey, for Zach was born and bred on the bayou, moving north to Maryland when he was 18 for college. "Was this before or after you cheating with another woman?" Audrina asked. Zach at least had the good grace to look baffled as he slowly turned from his football game to face his wife of 4 years. "You know about that?" he stuttered. "Of course I know about it," Audrina raged. "You weren't exactly subtle about it." They had argued for the rest of the evening, and she had packed a bag for her and baby Blaine, and left to return to her mother's house, where she stayed for a month. Zach left messages for her every day, telling her how sorry he was, that he was an idiot and that he wanted her back, needed her back. They met up in town for a coffee and discussed their options, and she had agreed to give it another try. Zach always was a smooth talker. They started taking couples therapy, and slowly the cracks started to heal. They discussed issues and problems more and were more attentive to each other's needs. But now, nearly 3 years later, it was all unraveling again. She wanted to give Zach the benefit of the doubt. Perhaps he was just working late, and then going to catch the game with his co-workers. But she remembered all too vividly the dread feeling when she found out about her husband's infidelities, the sick, disgusted feeling when she imagined him with another woman, and in their marriage bed. She felt terrible as she rang up Thomas, a mutual friend of theirs who worked with Zach. But it was the only way to put her mind at rest. She picked up the phone, dialed the number, and waited for the answer. "Hi Thomas," she started nervously. "It's Audrina Tellerman. How are you?" "Oh hi Audrina. I'm good thank you. How can I help you?" "Little late to be ringing isn't it?" he chuckled on the other end. "I got a phone call from Zach earlier, and when I went to ring back he didn't answer," she lied. "Is he around?" "Zach left hours ago," replied Thomas. This was not the answer Audrina had been looking for. She had rung so that Thomas could put her mind at ease and tell her that she was being silly and fanciful. "He said that you and he were meeting up with an old friend from college, but I take it by your angry sighs that he was lying." "Just a little bit," Audrina said. She felt so disloyal to Zach for doing this, but it was the only way. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cause trouble between you two." "Thomas, please. It's fine. It's not your fault. Zach shouldn't have lied about what working late." "Thank you for your help. Give Polly my love," she said, referring to his wife. She hung the phone up and started pacing back and forth angrily. So, having dinner with an old friend from college was code for spending time with his girl, Audrina thought. It wouldn't be Victoria. She wouldn't dare go there again, not after Audrina went all crazy on her, and denounced her publicly. There had to be another woman, or women, she suddenly thought. When he got home late that night, well after midnight, she was in bed already, feigning sleep. She heard Zach in the bathroom, getting undressed there before coming into the bedroom. Audrina waited a while, half an hour or so, until she heard his heavy breathing and soft snores. Confident that he was asleep, she gently rose from the bed and went to the bathroom. She picked up his suit pants, and felt around in the pockets, some of which contained loose change, a pen and a crumpled-up note about the Williamson account. She searched through the other pocket, and found a second crumpled-up bit of paper. She unfurled it and saw that it was a receipt for an expensive dinner, $120 worth, at a very expensive, glitzy restaurant called The Cellar, famed for its expensive and exotic collection of wines, champagnes, ports, brandies and sherries. Every time she and Zach drove past there, he had promised to take her there, and he never had. But one receipt wasn't very good evidence, so she continued searching. She picked up his light blue shirt, and caught a whiff of very strong, heady perfume. Nothing like what she would wear. She preferred subtle, musky scents, nothing over the top like this. Perfume and a receipt wasn't enough to condemn Zach with. There had to be more proof. Tangible proof. Over the next few weeks, Audrina started doing some reconnaissance. She paid more attention to the phone and credit card bills, and taking note of when Zach told her he was staying late at work or hanging out with his buddies. Yet all that seemed to not matter when one day, as she was doing the washing, she found a lipstick stain on his shirt collar. Rookie mistake, she thought, especially for someone as intelligent and pragmatic as her husband. Her heart sank, and tears brimmed in her eyes. He couldn't get away with it. Not this time. What was she going to do? Confront him about it? Yell and scream and rage at him? Cut up all his clothes and destroy his belongings? Take the baby and run away? She had to be practical about this. She couldn't just drop her life and run away from her problems. She put the washing on and went into the kitchen, staring out the window at the perfect sunny day, yet inside she felt cold and wintry. She tried to clear her mind by doing the chores. It always helped her think and come to a clear conclusion when she was busy and making herself useful. Blaine was at daycare, and would be for another 2 hours. This gave her plenty of time to think about her husband's affairs without distraction while she did the grocery shopping. As she idly pushed the shopping cart around the grocery store, reading off her list, her mind was far, far away. She couldn't stop picturing her husband having dinner with her, whoever she was. She imagined him kissing her goodbye with the promise of meeting up again soon. She didn't realize that she was shaking with anger until someone told her. "Miss," he said. "Excuse me, miss. You're shaking. Are you okay?" he asked. Audrina turned around, still not really paying attention. The gentleman in front of her seemed familiar, yet she couldn't place him. "I'm fine, thank you," she stated forcefully. "Oh my God, Audrina." "Audrina Ross?" the gentleman asked in surprise. She gave him an odd, inquiring look. "I'm Jeremy Fitzpatrick. We went to high school together. You were friends with my younger sister Beth." "I was a senior and you were a sophomore," he said. "Oh right," she answered, remembering him. She had had a wicked crush on Jeremy, her best friend's older brother, and she used to imagine him kissing her, whispering her name in passion. And then he left for college and she had been heartbroken for months afterwards. But then she had started dating and had a boyfriend for the rest of her time in high school, and Jeremy Fitzpatrick had become a distant memory. "So what are you up to now?" he asked. "It's been like what, 8 years since I last saw you." She had seen him very briefly at Beth's wedding, but she was dating Zach at that stage, and was paying Jeremy no attention. "I'm married now." "Who'd you end up marrying?" he asked. "Zach Tellerman. He was my date to your sister's wedding." "So you stayed together?" "That's great," he beamed. "Yeah, we've been married for 6 years and we have a 3-year-old son, Blaine." "What about you?" "I was engaged to Miranda Edmonds from high school," Jeremy explained. Miranda Edmonds, Audrina thought. She recognized that name, but couldn't figure out where from. "She was a cheerleader for the school, in with the popular gang," he offered. "Oh right. I know her. She was the super hot blonde girl." Audrina smiled. "So you bagged her?" "Not really. A month out from our wedding I found out she was cheating with my best friend, so I called it quits. We were engaged but never made it down the aisle." "Oh, I'm so sorry," replied Audrina. And then anger started welling up inside her once more as she thought of her husband with his lover. Jeremy was quick to change the subject. "So what do you do for a living?" he asked. "I'm a midwife." "Well, was a midwife. I went on maternity leave when I was pregnant with Blaine and sort of never went back. But it's all been okay. My husband is the general manager for Pryor & Co., the big accountancy firm. His best friend from college. His father owns the company and straight after graduation gave Zach the job and he's risen through the ranks, and is now highly sought after," she explained. "Go you," laughed Jeremy. "What do you do?" "I'm an agent for the FBI." "Really? How exciting, Audrina said, some of her anger starting to fade. I'm on vacation at the moment. I had heaps of time owing and they pretty much forced me out the door, he laughed. But it's great, I really enjoy my job. I'm glad, she replied. I have to get going, but it was great seeing you again. Would you like to catch up? Have dinner with me perhaps? Or a coffee? I won't take no for an answer. It seems to me as if you need a good chat, he said, smiling in sympathy. Audrina gave him a puzzled look in reply. I work for the FBI. It's my job to pick up small details about people. Here's my card. He fumbled in his pocket for his wallet, opened it and pulled out his card. Call me. He handed her the card and then left to continue on with his errands. Audrina stood there dumbly, not quite sure what to think or do. She raced through the rest of her shopping, picked Blaine up early, and went straight home. It took her 3 days to work up the courage to call Jeremy, but she was glad that she did. She agreed to have dinner with him the following Friday at a nice, decent-priced restaurant downtown. Jeremy had offered the cellar, but she turned it down. Knowing that her husband had been there with his lover made her stomach turn. She was a bag of nerves that day as she tried to figure out an excuse that would take her out of the house for the evening. I'm having a girls' night out on Friday, she lied to Zach as they ate dinner. Blaine had eaten earlier and was playing on the living room floor and watching a favorite DVD of his. Okay, Zach said, not that bothered. I'm having some of the guys over for the game on Friday. I suppose I could look after Blaine as well. We can't keep palming him off on your mother. Friday evening came around and Audrina found herself shaking as she got ready. Her shoulder-length medium brown hair was pinned back with a sparkly clip, the bottom layer of hair loose and hanging about her shoulders, and she slipped into a plain white knee-length shift dress that showed just a hint of cleavage. Midnight blue heels and a simple gold chain and pendant completed the look. As she kissed her husband goodbye, she was still so angry with him, but she was storing up her anger for some later time. Let him have his fun, she thought. She pulled up outside the restaurant and sat in the car, thinking this through. What did she hope to achieve by being here? She reminded herself that it was just two old friends having dinner and catching up, but was it? Was it really? Jeremy was already there, and waiting for her when she finally left the comfort of her car and went inside. He waved to her, and stood as she approached. He came around from his side of the table, smiled and kissed her on both cheeks. You look great, he beamed. She does, he thought, she really does. She had been a slightly awkward, baby-faced girl when last he knew her, but in that girl's place was a sophisticated, gorgeous grown-up woman. The only thing that hadn't changed were her eyes. Her beautiful golden, honey-brown eyes had stayed the same, warm and enchanting, just as he remembered. Jeremy in comparison had changed substantially. He had been short and slightly dumpy as a teenager, but he had grown into his frame and seemed somehow taller and leaner. His light brown hair was flat on his head and starting to thin slightly, but it was mostly unnoticeable. His blue-green eyes were smiling and kind and he held an air of confidence, yet unlike Audrina's husband, it wasn't arrogant or conceited. Here was a man who was confident enough within himself to not have to compensate by treating others badly or belittling them. He was still very bookish looking, and that evening he wore round, thin-framed glasses, but he was handsome in his bookishness, and it made Audrina smile to think how in love she had been with him when she was 18 years old. Drinks and food were ordered as Jeremy and Audrina picked up where they left off at the supermarket the other day. They managed to avoid the subject of her marriage and home life, which Jeremy guessed was a sore point with her, but they found that they had a lot in common. They both shared a love of cooking programs and recipe books, of which Audrina collected. They were into the same music and authors, and both had a passion for history, after dinner drinks and dogs. So, Jeremy started as the waiter cleared away their dinner plates. You didn't really come here to discuss your favorite authors and cookery books. You're having trouble at home, he asked, letting the question hang between them. Audrina almost choked on her wine. How do you know? She asked in a raspy voice, when she managed to calm down and regain composure, coughing slightly. You've avoided my questions all night about your husband, and you keep fiddling with your wedding ring, though may I just say your husband has very good and expensive taste. That thing must have cost a small fortune. Zach comes from money, she replied meekly. So, what issues are you having? He pressed. Audrina was reluctant to tell him and air her dirty laundry in public. She felt as if this was her shame. I can understand your disinclination to speak to me of your marriage problems, but come on, Audrina. I'm a near stranger to you, and I don't know your husband. You can be safe in the knowledge that I won't gossip and tell the world, and I'm unbiased and won't judge. She was put at ease with this information and with bated breath proceeded to tell Jeremy Fitzpatrick about her marriage problems. He's having more affairs, Audrina confided. Jeremy's expression remained neutral. More affairs, he questioned. Yes. Not long after Blaine was born I found out that he was cheating with a woman from my gym, and now I fear he's at it again. Why did you take him back after the first time? Because despite myself, I love him, and I'm loyal to him. He's the father of my son, and I thought that I owed it to Blaine and to myself to try and make this work, she explained. How do you know he's cheating again? Asked Jeremy. I did some detective work of my own. I found receipts for fancy, expensive dinners. I can smell perfume on him that isn't mine. He lies about his whereabouts, and what he's up to. His credit card bills have increased, and he hates using them. He's more of a cash man. He's on the phone for hours, and it's always for an out-of-town number. I found a blonde hair on his jacket, and a lipstick stain on his shirt collar. Jeremy mumbled. That certainly was condemning evidence. Tell me I'm being stupid. Tell me this is all in my head, and that I'm seeing things and being fanciful. Please, she replied, almost begging. Have you ever thought about getting him back? Asked Jeremy. Audrina was astounded. I'm being serious. Have you? Of course I have, she admitted, slightly embarrassed. I'm a woman. We all want retribution when we've been wronged. But to make love for revenge, what is that? I'd be as bad as Zach and the women I've so condemned. A tear rolled down her cheek, and Jeremy leaned over and swiped it away with the pad of his thumb. Audrina smiled weakly. Cheating with me, he said quietly. Again she looked at him wide-eyed, and in shock. Did you not just hear what I said? I did, admitted Jeremy, loud and clear. But I also heard you confess that you wanted retribution. Yes, but not with doing exactly what he is. It goes against everything I believe in morally, and it would play to my conscience. I believe in commitment. I'm sorry, Jeremy, she said, standing to leave. You know I had a crush on you, he stated out of the blue. Audrina looked up at him oddly. I did, he went on, but I never went any further with it, because I thought it would be too weird, seeing as I was a senior and soon to graduate and you were a sophomore. Why are you telling me this? Because I know that you had a crush on me also, he countered. We were kids back then. Things are different now. We're grown-ups. I'm 29 and I have a family that depends on me, she responded. I don't see how it's different. I mean, sure we're older, but that's the only thing that's changed. We still like each other. Out of everyone I went to school with, you're the one I spend the most time thinking about. Please stop, Mr. Fitzpatrick, she said quietly, tears welling in her eyes once more. So it's come to that, has it? We're no longer on a first-name basis. What do you want from me? She said in a voice that was very close to a whisper. Just stay a while, please, Audrina. We can chat some more and then at the end of the night you can come to your decision, he said. He pointed at her vacant chair, and she sighed and sat back down. Decision? She questioned. Yes. About whether or not you'll come with me to freedom, or if you'll go back to your husband, and to the lie. Or the third option. I go home to my husband, confront him and throw him out, and have my freedom without transgressing, retorted Audrina. Jeremy smirked. You and I both know that won't happen, he stated. The waiter came over with the dessert and drinks menu, and then left again. He was a good-looking youth, the waiter. His black hair was tied back in a stubby little ponytail, his skin was beautifully tanned, and his smile wide and boyish. Audrina guessed that in another life perhaps, he was a surfer. She pretended to read through the dessert menu, to try and distract herself from Jeremy's implacable stare. Okay, he said, leaning in towards her. Say we don't together tonight. Say we leave here as friends. I can still help you get your freedom. I can still liberate you. I don't need rescuing, she hissed. Why are you so obsessed with freeing me all of a sudden? Because you need to be helped. I can see the sadness and hurt in your eyes, Audrina. Every time you smile it's fake and calculated. Right now you're probably wondering why you ever told me about your husband's cheating. The woman I see here today is a far cry from the girl I knew in my youth, from the happy, confident, ambitious, intelligent girl I used to know. But I also know that it's not your fault. No matter how much you may blame yourself and think it is your fault, it's not, explained Jeremy. The tears that were welling up in her honey-colored eyes earlier now spilled down her cheeks. She sniffed and dabbed at her eyes with the napkin. She no longer cared if people were staring at her or watching. She hadn't cried or let her emotions go in months. She was more the type to bottle things up and let them fester before finally boiling over. Here now, darling, he said, grabbing her hand. Audrina finished dabbing her eyes and looked up. No one had called her darling in a long time, not even her husband. After his first affair all the pet names and little lovey-dovey things between them had ceased. I know what you're doing, she said, her voice heavy with pent-up sobs. You're playing to my emotions to try and change my mind. I'm trying to help you see sense, he answered. Why do you care so much? You don't even know me, Mr. Fitzpatrick. We are near-perfect strangers and you're going to tell me how to live my life and what I should do, she questioned, her tears ceasing and her anger rising. She stood up from the seat and stormed from the restaurant and went to sit in her car. A few minutes later Jeremy found her. He opened the passenger side door and got in. Audrina was crying once more. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed. Jeremy leaned over. "I'm so sorry," she repeated. "You never did like accepting help," he said, trying to lighten the mood. Audrina sniffed and dabbed at her eyes, laughing a little. He took her face in his and kissed her, softly at first. He had wanted to do this for years, except it was different now. He wasn't a green youth with his first hard on discovering girls for the first time. He was nearly 32 years old with years of conquest under his belt, and she was a grown woman, a married woman, a mother. There was trepidation in her kiss. She was still very unsure of what she was doing. She pulled away from the kiss, despite how much she was enjoying this. It had been a long time since someone had touched her. "Is there somewhere we can go?" she heard herself asking. This was all like a dream to her, as if this wasn't reality anymore. Jeremy smiled and advised her that it was probably safer if they took his car back to his apartment, which was on the other side of town. What if someone she knew saw them? They drove in silence. They parked downstairs and Jeremy led her to the elevator, punching in the number for the 7th floor. His apartment was a large studio room that overlooked the west side of the city, and at this time of night, with the street lights and fluorescent signs, it was absolutely stunning. Jeremy flicked on the lights and his apartment came into view. There was the kitchen and dining area. When you first walked in, all new, modern fittings, except they weren't very well broken in, and the round dining table was more of a storage area than an eating area. The lounge area was off to the left with a large, flat-screen TV, video game console and expensive stereos typical bachelor apartment. Just across from that was what made up the bedroom, which was 2 walls to divide the kitchen and the lounge from the bed. She sat down on the corner of the bed uninvited and put her head in her hands. She felt like crying again, yet no tears came. Jeremy came and joined her, but made no move to touch her. "Not just yet. If we're going to do this, there are a few things I need to say. Some rules that need to be established. This is a once-off thing. This is only for tonight," Audrina stipulated. "I am not an adulterer. Not intentionally anyway. We will not continue together after this. If I choose to get a divorce, then afterwards I am yours." Audrina took a deep breath before she continued, slightly scared and embarrassed to admit this next part. "I have a scar on my stomach from my C-section. You are not to comment on it, or ask about it. I hate it and that is that. There will be no mention of my husband while I am here. My home life and my husband are no-go areas." "Any more rules, Captain?" he asked, half joking, half mockingly. Audrina was unamused. Jeremy nodded his head in understanding, realizing how difficult this must be for her. How out of character it was. He would have to lead and take it slow with her. He started by cupping her face and bringing it closer to his. He kissed her, so softly, but when his lips brushed hers again she kissed back, her courage and passion growing. "Can you guess what happens next?" "I know what I have to do," she said after a few moments of silence. "What?" Jeremy panted. "I have to get a divorce."